Are you looking to level up your author business?
Are you pounding your head against a wall, wondering what your next step should be? Then join me, Daniel Wilcox.
And me, Sacha Black, as we haul ass each week in a bid to level up.
Level up!
Come along for the ride as we delve deep into the business of writing,
Craft,
entrepreneurship,
and every level of the author journey. This is the Next Level Author Podcast.
Hello, Achievers! Welcome to episode number 80 of the Next Level Authors Podcast, a podcast where we hold each other to account and track our step-by-step progress as we lean back on our squeaky chairs and level up our author business. My name is Daniel Wilcox, and here with me every week is...
Sacha Black.
Sup, Sacha? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm still good from last week. I am in such a good place right now. I have all the happiness, all the joy, all the positivity to share with the world. Also, I'm dead on the inside, but you know.
Yeah, seems it. Why so happy? What's going on?
I don't know. I do know. I think learning about strengths is the best thing I've ever done, and understanding what I need from life and how to structure my life is just so wonderful. I have been finishing things. Do you know what I learned this week? It is a stunning revelation, shocking precisely no one. When you don't have shitloads of stuff to do for other people, do you know what you can do?
Stuff
All
for yourself.
of the stuff for you. I know. It's unfucking believable, isn't it? I mean, who'd have thought that I could get so much stuff done for me? And you know what? Like, this is the amazing thing. Would you check out how much shit I have crossed off?
That's a lot of crossing outs for people on the podcast.
So yeah, for people on the podcast, I just showed a very highly crossed out list.
Not surprisingly, purple pen.
Yeah. I like only write in purple. So like it is bringing me deep joy and gratification to cross everything off my list. Hello, Achiever Pennies. But also to be working on the things that I should be working on. Like I still have a few bits that need finishing, but yeah, I mean, I did wobble at the beginning of the week actually, because I kind of came to the week like, oh, I don't have stuff to do for other people. What am I supposed to be doing? And then like slowly over the course of the week, I was like, oh wait, okay, no, I can just do stuff for me. So I've launched an audiobook, which is fun. Yeah, I mean, I haven't like done a big splash or anything yet. Like I'm not even sure I've announced it on the podcast. I think I'll be doing that today. But yeah, next week I've got, I don't know if I did this before or after our last recording, but I have a 70-minute long special episode. Yeah, that is the 8 lessons I've learned recording audiobooks. And I do like voices and stuff on there to like show people like some performance like lessons that I've learned. And I don't preach to be an expert or anything. These are just things that I have learned and picked up through the many and varied fuck ups that I made recording the audiobook. So yeah, I am like super proud of that special episode. And I also really like it because I found a line in my report that talks about how I like to do lessons learned, to look at what went well and what didn't go so well, and how that helps me compete better and be a better competitor. And so yeah, that gave me like, it generated so many energy pennies, and I was like, oh yeah, I remembered why I love doing lessons learned. And so yeah,
that was a chore for you not long ago. You had a real like, this is all extra work that I can't fit in, but obviously now you've made that space and it's beneficial for you.
Yeah, and like 20 times, because I know things that I can do better next time because I've reflected and I've done the lessons learning. It's given me pennies doing that exercise. Yeah, and so I think you will really like this. I made the decision last night. Next month, I'm going to book a 1-hour one-to-one voice coaching session.
Oh, nice.
Wait, for fun, Dad. Yeah, so it's going to be on character voices and stuff, like, and I'm not necessarily ever going to record my own fiction. So I'm just doing it for fun, for the fun of learning the knowledge, because I love performing. And I, maybe that will come into my nonfiction or the next nonfiction audiobook. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to do it just for the shits and giggles of it. So yeah, I mean, it's going to cost me like $150, but it's going to be fun. So yeah, I'm like super excited for that. Yeah, and like I don't know. I am filled with joy by delaying things, by keeping secrets, and by just yeah, like I don't know, like I've just been getting on and doing, and I am in love with that, and I'm just happy.
Good.
That's it.
Good. It's about fucking time.
So Boo. We should talk about your week though, shouldn't we? Because I have had sporadic updates and wow.
Yeah, so before we take a nosedive, let's I do just want to like add on to because you said about taking more time doing the stuff for you. I had a moment of personal growth this week because I got contacted by a friend who a couple months ago, she's writing a book, and I looked over her first draft and basically did sort of like preliminary feedback notes on just sort of like story arc and sort of things that she could tweak and stuff and improve on for the second draft. And I won't name it, but I hope she doesn't mind me talking about it if she is listening. But she contacted me and asked if she's done the second draft, whether or not I'd look at it and do sort of a full edit towards the end of this year as part of the book. And I said no in a very polite way, because like editing is a fantastic experience to help with your own writing as well, because you get to see how other people write and get to pick up those pitfalls and the things that work and why they do and don't. But it's just not on my agenda right now. Like I have so many other things to do, and although it's harder when you've already contributed to something to not see something else through, but I very, very politely was like, I'm really sorry, like that's not where I am right now. Here's the kind of stuff I'm doing. Sent over some recommendations for some other people she could potentially use, and she was very, very like kind, and as I knew she would be. And yeah, she's taken the business elsewhere and kind of like wish me luck with the stuff I'm doing. And like that's not to say like we've parted ways as friends, like we're still quite good friends, but I was just very happy. It was one of those moments where someone messages you that and you have that little stomach like,
oh God, yeah,
because I want to, but I know that I shouldn't. So that was growth. But yeah, no, like my week hasn't. It's been a weird week. So I didn't have my son over the weekend because he was doing some things with his mama. So I ended up working on Sunday, which proved to be very, very useful. I then worked very, very well on Monday. I worked very hard on Tuesday. And then I was midway through one of my Zoom writing sprints for my boot camp. And I just started to feel sick. So I literally, like in one of the breaks, I was talking to people and I literally just went, yeah, I'm really sorry, but I'm about to throw up. So I'm going to leave the camera on. You guys can continue because I have timers and stuff set up and they know what the deal is. And then I just walked out. And then thus I was in bed for the next day and a half. And I kind of revived myself around midday yesterday, which would have been Thursday for people listening on the podcast. And I'm still not 100%, but I'm back to sort of cognitively where I need to be. And yeah, I'll say nothing on the time in between. I think, people can make their own assumptions, but it was just one of those that I was like, last week was a lot of sort of mental unwellness. This week was a lot of physical unwellness. And I'm sat here going, I'm ready for that good week now. Yeah. I want that to come back.
Because I had 2 cracking weeks for your 2 shit weeks.
It's just what happens with us. It's the yin and the yang. Yeah. But like to be fair, the week before last, I had an amazing week, and that tends to kind of go in peaks and valleys. So I don't know. Like I'm feeling so much better today. And yesterday was my sister's birthday, so last night I was over hers with all the family, and like we had a bit of a celebration and cake and stuff. But yeah, I've not done as much work as I'd like to do. But again, it took me back to that, like, what is your minimum? And I was able to do the minimum of what I needed to do to survive the week. So that was my week. I watched maybe 2 seasons of Parks and Recreation. I watched 3 seasons of Mitchell and Webb. I watched half a season of The Witcher. I read some book.
Oh my God, was this all yesterday?
This was all like Wednesday. And then my God. I slept a lot. Illness sucks. This is why I don't go outside anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. But twisting that around, what's something that you've enjoyed this week?
Booking flights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually wasn't going to say that. I didn't realize I was going to say that until it just came out of my mouth. But so I have booked flights abroad to the Netherlands to see my papa, who I have not seen in 2.5 years. The last time I saw him was the day I left my day job. He was there as I walked out of the building.
Oh, yes.
He came specially to see me leave the day job. And yeah, so that was the very last time I saw him, and we have both been full-time for 2.5 years. So I actually find it quite shocking now. No, like as I say this, because we were sort of talking off air about the fact that I hadn't seen him for 2.5 years. But when I equate that to having left my day job, I am not the same human I was on that day. Like I am so far from who that girl was that I'm like, oh my God, I am like a whole new human. And I haven't seen my dad in that whole time because of COVID. Yeah. And I just, wow. Yeah. So that has been very enjoyable. And we are going we're going in the half-term week. So this month I get to see my dad, which will be lovely. Yeah. How about you? What have you enjoyed?
Well, it's weird because the pandemic, like, just is a blip now. It just like, yeah, I try and think back to like what I was doing this time last year, and it was just
Being
different
in lockdown.
Yeah, I was in a different house by myself for a lot of it, which was nice because I had lots of space, but it was also in a house by myself, which is this is one of the things that I love about like Zoom and the fact that digital video communication came on so quickly over the last like few years. Is like this podcast kept me going through lockdown, great writers share, like the boot camp and the sprints and all that kind of stuff. Like you could still see people even though you couldn't see people, you know. Something that I've enjoyed this week, so many things to pick from.
Having the shits.
I'm going to go for so I'm reading a book by an author called Stephen Graham Jones, who is a Native American author, and I'm currently reading his book Mongrels, which came out a couple of years ago, I believe, and it is beautiful and it is phenomenal and it is poetry and it is it's gorgeous, and it's basically about werewolves, but in a way that I've never seen werewolves written about before. It's told from the lens of this kid who you're kind of tracking his journey, because in this lore of werewolf, most werewolves don't find or turn into werewolves until they're around the age of 16, and because his parents were mixed, he doesn't know if he's going to be a werewolf or not. But he's growing up with an aunt and uncle who are werewolves, so he's living the werewolf life, but he's not sure if he is going to be a werewolf. But it's telling the story from like when he's 8, when he's 11, when he's 9, when he's 13, and all these different stages of like having to travel around the country because werewolves have to move a lot. And there's so much thought and depth and color in the legend that they give the werewolves and how they work and how they exist within society without getting caught. And I think just the fact that it's told from this lens of this kid it's almost like this imaginative side to him as he's telling the story. And I it's really difficult to explain, but it's such beautiful prose. And the reason I'm enjoying it so much is because, and I will say this is my opinion, and I know lots of people who have loved this. His latest book, The Only Good Indians, which is I think it might have won a Bram Stoker, but it definitely won This Is Horror Award for Best Novel this year. I did not like, and I wasn't going to give this author another chance until the people in my horror reading club were like, no, you have to try some of the other stuff, because like Mongrels is incredible, and Mongrels is incredible. And for me, it really does go to show that like a story can really change the voice and what the author can portray. And like the thing that I love about what he's done specifically is that both books are so uniquely different, and you can tell that he's really trying to stretch his writer muscles and going down different territory, and he's being bold and trying new stuff. And you know, sometimes that comes with risks and sometimes that doesn't. There's a rubbish truck outside my house, that's what the beeping is. But I love it when authors can make bold choices and really try to like grow their art. And there's always going to mean that there might be some misses for some people, but it means that you'll get some sort of knockouts on the way. And yeah, it has kind of shifted my perception of him as an author.
One of my favorite obsessions with craft at the moment, and I do wax and wane between different things, but at the moment it is voice. I'm fascinated by voice, and
the voice is so good in this.
I'm fascinated by individual author voice and by genre voice. So like one of the things that I picked up last night, I'm reading this book called Who I Was With Her, which is of course a young adult lesbian, bisexual, kind of contemporary bittersweet romance. So it's a very good comp author for The Scent of Death. And the tone is very or not necessarily the tone, but it sounds like other books in the genre, which obviously it should do that. But I'm reading enough of them, I'm starting to be able to deconstruct and to see like the
Oh,
different
you're gonna love
voices.
our question.
And one of the things that I picked up is how different young adult fantasy is to young adult contemporary, or just contemporary in general, or this particular type of contemporary anyway. They are very narrative. Like there's so much narration from the protagonist and reflection in a way that I don't think you get in fantasy. You get a little bit of it in fantasy, of course, because you need your characters to grow, but it's nothing compared to the detail of this. And like I am having a field day deconstructing. And anyway, sorry, I'm just geeking out for a minute. That was a reflection that I had last night, was the difference between no matter how sort of like world building or how much detail is in a fantasy, it's still mostly plot driven versus contemporary, which is really focused on the characters. And I'm not saying you can't have fantasy that's focused on the characters. You can. I don't know. I'm still deconstructing and still trying to intellect on it. And of course, I haven't like got the exact way to explain what I'm trying to say, but I will come back to you before I upset people who are like, well, I write character-driven fantasy. I know, honey, it's fine. Like, it's fine. You do.
I've had that a few times where like people have asked me a question. It's like, I have thoughts on this, but I haven't like vocalized them enough to like get the solid grasp of what I'm trying to say. Also, just because as you were speaking, I had just a sudden thought. I don't know if everyone in the audience would understand what you mean by contemporary. Like if there are some sort of newer authors, how would you describe contemporary?
Okay, so to explain contemporary, I'm going to explain fantasy. So fantasy, I mean anything that's not set purely in our world. So it could be in our world, but you could have changed something. So there's magic, for example, even if it's set in our world. But contemporary, essentially, by contemporary, I mean something set in our world, relatively in our time zone. So sort of maybe 90s onwards, maybe noughties onwards, even stretching maybe to the 80s, maybe not to the 80s. It's starting to get a bit more. I know it's fucking horrible.
We are getting older.
We were born in the 80s. I know. But anything, fuck off. Anything that is sort of set relatively in our time, actually in our world is what I mean by contemporary. So like romances are contemporary, but I don't really, I mean, they are technically contemporary, but this is very much like high school set. That's, this genre is, so there you go.
Sweet. Weekly confessional. So Sacha will work on Trey, read more, continue shutting down tasks, and finish Storyteller by end of play Friday.
Yes.
Boom.
Full fucking house, bitches.
I've gone back and reread mine. This is wonderful. Dan will create a presentation and give it at the Be a Bestseller Road to Resilience conference. I did that yesterday. That went swimmingly. And finished the resources for the challenge, which I actually have done. I thought I'd added as well. I thought I'd added the ghostwriting stuff, but I didn't because I knew that I had this stuff to do, which worked out well because I was in bed for a day and a half.
Thank God. So you did actually survive the week. Well done, sunshine.
I did it. What's the conclusion on last week's failure?
So I have been thinking about this all week, and I'm in a really difficult position because I personally feel like the accountability isn't necessarily working because I definitely am avoiding because I'm not driven by what we're doing, if that makes sense. Like it's not working as motivation. It's working for me to be difficult and avoiding because I don't necessarily work in 1 week blocks. So I was wondering whether we change it to month blocks or we just stick with the quarterly challenges. Because we're still holding each other to account. So rather than doing like a task that we have to do each week, which is just adding either unnecessary pressure or adding a task into the week that we wouldn't like just for the sake of adding a task, whether or not we check in each week on the quarterly challenge. That might be, I don't know. But on whether or not you failed, this is where I kind of came to this conclusion. Because I am self-driven and self-motivated, I was a bit like, I would know if I felt like I failed, and I would feel really hard done by if you said I'd failed, even because I remember once this happened and I was really pissed off. And I think that's when I disengaged from the weekly accountability, because I felt like I had done everything I could, but I still failed. And so that is sort of when I switched off. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like, that's why I'm saying you're telling me you don't feel like you failed because, you know, we all need those mental health weeks. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I know, I get that, because you deliver week after week after week. And that's why I'm saying I don't think it works. So yeah, that's where my thoughts have gone. So maybe one for us to continue talking about offline.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is difficult trying to come up with something each week when we're already kind of doing the things that we know that we're going to be doing.
Exactly.
Like, I think the good thing about the forfeits, and I think it's one of the things that, like, especially in the beginning few months / like year, the good thing about the forfeits is obviously, like, I'm pretty sure that the audience enjoy that kind of like tension of like, oh, well, they won't then, kind of the forfeits that come.
I agree.
But no, I totally agree with you. I think, like, definitely number one, whatever happens, the tasks need to be much more like accountable for, but they also need to be more flexible in that way to allow for.
Yeah, because I'm finding I'm just putting arbitrary stuff rather than things that are going to, that are part of my focus, or I don't know. It needs to, there needs to be a bit more structure, or then it needs to be tweaked, I think.
Something to consider. I mean, if people are listening and they have any ideas for what we can do, then by all means pop it in the comments, and we'll consider them, especially like patrons, get your ideas over. But yeah, I think I really like the idea of the accountability and, you know, the kind of like the fun forfeits. I think let's keep forfeits fun. But yeah, let's have a look and see what we do with them. I mean, we're coming up, well, we're not, we're a year and a half into this now. Jesus, won't be long until it's 2 years, but like, especially coming up to the end of 2021, we can have a look at like maybe a new way to approach going into the next year and sweeping that through. But no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to level up?
Yes, give me a level up.
Okay, Julie Heiner, a very challenging month. Sometimes things happen and you just have to deal with it. Oh, look, this is very on brand this week. I finally got back on track. Then, just had some issues and was in bed for some days. It's all good. I'm back and I'm pumped and I'm excited about my first collaboration. The launch and celebration are coming up. I've got another horror story accepted in a killer anthology launching in a couple of weeks. I'm going to launch a solo horror novella on Halloween, and I just signed up for a script writing course. Shudder, here come some 80s metal murder. Yeah, everyone, no matter what challenges come up, regroup and keep going. And I think that is the perfect level up for this week.
Really is a
juggernaut. Awesome. Yeah, I was just about to say, she's a machine. I bet she has like discipline and consistency in her strengths. I can't help it, I'm sorry.
No.
Or focus, maybe.
Yeah, no, Julie's doing lots of really cool stuff. And like, we both co-edited the Omen's Call anthology, which came out on the 1st of October. I've arc read her latest book, Owen's Terrarium, which is fantastic and coming out around Halloween time. And yeah, she's just a fantastic example of someone who not only like knows how to have fun with her writing, but she can also like portray that to the public as well. Like, I left her to basically just organize and sort out the Facebook Live launch event for the Omen's Call, and we had such a fun time, and it was all professional, it was slick. She does like rock parties and things with her own launches, and it's just, if people want to see like how to launch a book and how to just have fun doing it, then check out Julie's stuff, because it's solid.
I think she's a shining example of how to do it your own way. Yeah, I love that about her.
Yeah, and me and Julie may or may not be working on something else in the next few months. Just throwing that on there. So level up challenge. Want to say congratulations to the people in the post who have already told us that they've won the challenge, including Andrew, Meg, Ember, Rianne, Claire, Brett, Ara, Sam, and Cassie, who uploaded a wonderful video this morning.
I
teasing
loved
the eggs.
Video.
Teasing the eggs.
I loved it.
The thing is, I saw her post saying that she'd won, and then I saw the video and I was like, has she failed? Has she just realized that she failed? But no, she was just making breakfast. So I do just want to remind people that if you didn't quite hit what you were after, it's all just in fun. There's nothing too serious about it. Like the egg juggling thing, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you didn't quite hit where you want to be. And I want to see those videos. And to be fair, I do have to film my egg juggling. Not that I didn't do the challenge, but I just want to juggle some eggs to see what it's like, and have a reason to do that. But we have also, so we've been discussing the Q4 level up challenge. Oh, before we get into that, what we will do is let me try all of this again. So by the time this episode airs, we will have posted on the Facebook group with the Q4 challenge and also the winners of the prizes for the Q3 challenge, which was, just as a reminder, a 30-minute call with myself and Sacha, a hardback copy of my self-publishing blueprint, and a copy of Sacha's 10 Steps to Hero workbook. And then, like I say, all the details for Q4 will be over in the Facebook group, but we might have a few sort of Christmas goodies and surprises in there for y'all as well. So get involved. Comments.
Yep, that's me. Okay, so we only had a couple of comments last week. Edwin said, I am a lifelong learner, picking up far more outside any formal learning environment by pursuing interests as they arrive. I learn by going over a subject time and again, revisiting those parts that draw me the most on every occasion available to me.
You're doing your audiobook voice.
Well,
I love it.
I have taken, I just slip into it. I started reading.
That was so different.
I slipped into, this is a problem. Like when you
Okay, comments from last week. So what we found. I love it. Sorry, carry on.
I can't help it. It just happened. It's reading, I think, because obviously you have to read whilst you do that. And so I just slip into it. Fuck off, you can read the rest.
I haven't got them in front of me. This is your job.
Oh, while I have taken a range of workshops over the years, the thought of going back to a formal situation best suited for people who don't rock. I don't want to read them now.
Go on. I wasn't saying it was a bad thing. I was just saying it was different.
Ida says, I love this episode. It's really hard not to do it. I'm a lifelong learner. While at uni, I kept taking extra classes and adding majors and minors because I loved being there and did not want to leave family and friends and did not understand what was taking so long. Lol.
I've really thrown you off.
Really thrown me because I nearly dropped into it again.
You did.
That's what the
you
pause
can.
was.
It's fine.
Then I went back for the masters. A few years ago, I had a chance to do several post-MA classes and I loved being in class. It was hard with kids, but I loved it. I've considered a second MA. I've also considered a PhD. There's a particular PhD I'm interested in, and it wouldn't even add anything to my career unless I want to be dean. And I don't know if I do want to be dean, but I would love to do it just because of the subject. I'm also one of those that will see something on TV or a website, and I'll go search/learn about it until something else grabs my attention.
Beautiful. Thank you everyone for commenting. Before we go into the main question, I do just want to remind people that as of the time this podcast airs, I'll be on day 2 of the 5-day free Nano Preppers Challenge. It isn't too late to join in. If you want to jump in, you can go over to facebook.com/groups/activated authors and jump straight in and get all the resources and get involved. And for people who are looking at really trying to conquer Nano, if you've struggled to beat NaNoWriMo in the past, then check out my bootcamp, which is at danielwilcox.com/nano, where I've got a group of authors together, smashed into a tiny little group where we're going to just absolutely kill Nano and drive people forward. And it's got loads of good resources. We all work together. And what I will say, and I think I probably mentioned this on the podcast before, but like the international average for completion for Nano is less than 20%. Last year, the bootcamp got a 78% completion rate. So, you know, there's truth and there's proof in actually joining a group and, you know, being accountable for what you're doing. So check that out. Sacha, do you have anything this week?
Oh, an audiobook.
Hey, I was waiting for that.
Yeah. So if you would like to hear my narrative voice, actually, I was trying to think. I don't think that is my for narration voice. It is one of the narration voices anyway. Yeah, so I have an audiobook, and if you would like to check out my audiobook in my very sultry audiobook tones, then you can by visiting any audiobook store or
Getting a little bit
audiobook
hot.
app. So does Chloe. No, I'm joking.
God.
Sorry, that's too far. Yeah, you can check out. Ruined it. You can check out. It will be direct on my website. It's not quite yet, but yeah, 13 Steps to Evil. If you want to learn about characters, if you want more of my sultry tones, yeah, or if you just want to be nosy, then go and check it out. I'm really, really proud of it. Is it the best audiobook ever? I don't know. No.
Oh God, you can't even just sell yourself, can you?
No, I can't. But it's because I did my lessons learned, and I'm like, I am going to make prose even better. Don't get me wrong. But I can't remember if I said this on my podcast or to you or wherever. But
because we're all just the same.
I know, they all blend. I have not had this sense of achievement in a really, really long time. It was so hard, and I worked my ass off to get this, and it sounds fucking good. And I am really, really proud of it. I have not been this proud in such a long time, and yeah, I am so pumped and excited to do another one. I'm just not going to do it until I finish Trey. But yeah, I am so proud of this audiobook. So yeah, I just wish that it was on CD and I could hold it, because it's a thing I've created that I can't hold it. So it's an odd, I just wish I had a thing that I could show for it. I mean, obviously I have a thing I can show for it, but not like a tangible thing.
That's the problem with digital stuff.
Yeah. It is good though. I won't lie. It is pretty fucking good.
Well, people can check out a sample of it on your Instagram.
They can, yeah. It's like a cheeky sample.
Cheeky.
Yeah, it's cheeky. I am going to pull off some more and make some more audiograms, because Becca is amazing, has done a few images for me.
Nice.
So I will put some more samples on there over the next few weeks.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. This week's question, and again, it's always interesting how the question I'm going to ask somehow seeds itself into a little bit of what we were talking about in the preamble. I need your help.
Okay.
So I don't believe there's any secret to you, I am currently reviewing where I go forward with my own fiction, because I, for the longest time, have been writing mixes of post-apoc, of horror, a little bit of sci-fi. And one thing that I have found is horror is very, very difficult to create a series or to serialize, or just to kind of create more expansive work. It's not impossible. People have done it. But in the way that I like to write my horror, I don't know that that's the path. And when I created When Winter Comes, that was my attempt at writing a serial and to do something bigger. And I now have this chunky book on my shelf. But one thing that I keep coming back to is the idea of getting more fantasy with my books, and specifically more sort of horror fantasy, dark fantasy. And so I'm on a bit of a journey of genre exploration, because we both agree that when writers start writing their book, one thing that will infinitely help you down the line is know your genre before you start writing as much as you can, because then you understand tropes, you understand everything else. So my question to you is, how do you find your genre?
Fucking hell. Oh, that is such a hard question.
Yeah, stupidly, annoyingly hard. And then this is the question that we expect new writers to answer.
So, God, I think there's a tangible answer to that and an intangible answer to that. And I think the intangible, am I going to go there first, or am I going to? Okay, so I think the tangible answer to that is you have to read a lot and widely. And I think that is one difference between writers and readers. And by readers, I mean people who don't write but like reading books, because people who don't write, who like reading books, more or less stick to one genre, and that they will have found that via, I don't know, something in their childhood that led them to whatever genre it is. And I was kind of reminded of this recently because my wife has these friends, and one of them is a prolific whale reader. Will read 2 to 4 books a week every week, and pretty much solely science fiction. And I sort of had, asked about things slightly out of that. And it was like, oh no, that doesn't really interest me. And I'm like, how do people only read in that one genre? Because I can't do that. Like, yes, I know I am about to binge read probably 70 books in one genre, but also, I've just read crime books and a romance and a historical fiction, and I also read nonfiction, and I've got some literary fiction up there that I want to read in the next year. And so I definitely have 2 or 3 genres that I prefer and that I tend to read in, but as a writer, I can't help but read in other genres, not least because you pick up things that they do that you can bring into your own genre. So yeah, I think the tangible answer is by reading, and reading with intention, like in genres and subgenres. So if you know you have a preference for fantasy, you've got to read and like go out and target and find books that are in a variety of subgenres to try and work out what it is that you like. So that is really the the easiest way to do that. The other thing you can do is look at, well, what kind of stuff do you watch? Like what subgenres is that in? That might be another way to think about it. Because funnily enough, guess what I watch?
Everything.
Shit. Teen shit. No, teen shit. The majority of the stuff that I watch is teen stuff. I've just finished Sex Education, right? Teen TV show. Things like Vampire Diaries, teen fantasy, stuff like that. That said, there is also another part of me that absolutely loves political kind of fixer roles. So like Scandal, The West Wing, Ray Donovan, the Sopranos is one that I really want to watch, but I know they have to like really carve out some time to do that because I haven't ever watched The Sopranos. So The Bodyguard was another one. So like there's another thing, like stuff that's heavy action, even though I don't read like thrillers and stuff. But yeah, that political, there is a thread there that I have noticed that will come, I think, at some point in the future. So that more on the intangible side, I think, is know thyself and observe thyself. So one of the things that the reason I worked out I was in the wrong genre for now, and I say that because as somebody who is a high learner, I know I will write in many, many genres over the course of my career. I am not going to pigeonhole myself into just young adult lesbian or just young adult fantasy. I will write adult fantasy. I will probably end up writing some romance, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm probably going to write something political at some point. I don't know. And I'm going to write more mind stuff, philosophical stuff too. Anyway, know thyself. How do you react when you read books? Like that is no, but like it's such a key thing, like to know, like rather than just consuming and being a consumer of words, like watch how you react, because we react very differently to different kinds of books, and in seeing that reaction, it can help lead you down the path of, okay, this is the kind of thing. If it's creating like either a really significant emotional reaction, if it's good or bad, if it's creating like a wistful kind of, oh my God, this was amazing. What was it that was amazing? What is it about that you like? Because it might not be the genre. it might be the prose, or it could be the tone or the message. So it's digging down into, one, what was your reaction, and two, like what caused that reaction, to see whether it's theme, style and voice, or whether it's actually genre. And then wait, hang on. So it was, I'm missing a big chunk of what I wanted to say. Yeah, know thyself, observe. Yeah, and then what brings you joy? Like, so last night I opened this book, right? And within 5 pages, I was like, it was like this weight off my shoulders, this sigh, this sagging relief to be back with a tone and voice that feels like home. And I suppose that is kind of like the same as know thyself and observe thyself, but really, yeah, it sparks so much joy in me to read that kind of content. And so it's not an easy answer, because it is a doing task. And it requires time. It's a doing task to read as much and as widely as you can, and to observe yourself, and that is always hard. Self-reflection is hard.
Before I answer, I want to prod just a little bit deeper, because obviously, like, I agree with a lot of what you said, and like when I answer, there's definitely sort of a lot of resonating factors. How do you specifically find those books?
Okay, so this has been really hard, because there are no indie authors that I can find who write young adult lesbian stuff. I'm sure there are. I'm just struggling to find them.
Sacha,
so I can
trailblazer.
Yeah. So I can tell you what I've done. When I have found one book in a genre, I go on to Goodreads and see what is sort of in and around on the page. So usually when you add something to your shelf, it will come up with a list of other books that you might enjoy, and much the same as Amazon in the also boughts. So I've been looking at also boughts. I've been looking at Goodreads quite a lot. And once you start to click on one or another, it starts to show you stuff. So it's having that first book that resonates, and then going to like that author. The other thing that I do is I've gone on to Instagram, and I have looked up hashtags like queer lit, queer young YA, or YA LGBT, or whatever. I don't know. Can't remember the exact ones. And I've started to find like, did you know there's Gaze the Word in London, there is Queer Lit UK bookstore in Manchester, there's another queer bookstore in Wales. I didn't know any of this before I started looking, and so I'm starting to follow them, and that obviously brings up new people on Instagram, and then there's a few really good people who read a lot of queer books, and so I've been following them and going through their recommendations, and so I'm like screenshotting and collecting, like and I'm basically creating this giant spreadsheet. What else have I done? Whatshouldireadnext.com is a website where you can put in a book that you've enjoyed, and then you can find other books like it.
Nice.
Categories on like Waterstones or Barnes and Noble, Amazon, looking in categories, that also helps, and by categories I mean like typing in young adult LGBTQ, and then it will have like a whole top 100 in that category. Amazon, I have to say, is less good, I think, than some of the other stores, because they're so convoluted and polluted, but some of the other stores are still quite pure. So like Waterstones has some quite good young adult sections, although they are all trad, and so that makes it harder to look for what you're looking for. Another thing that I am yet to do, but I'm about to do, there are some young adult Facebook groups. So I'm also going to post in young adult Facebook groups asking for recommendations. the recommendations are always a bit hit and miss, but they are a jumping off point. So you can then use those to go and find individual books. And I would say over the course of about 2 weeks, I've now got a list of 130 young adult lesbian and bisexual books. So it definitely, like, asking other people as well for recommendations, going into a bookstore and asking a bookseller, really helpful. I've now made friends with one of the ladies in Waterstones in Peterborough, and they like follow me on Instagram, and I've like sent them my list to share so that they can stock better and differently. And she's like pulling stuff into the store because of me, because I spend so much money there. And yeah, so like, you know, just talking to people and asking for recommendations. And I think the biggest ones have been finding people on Instagram who like specialize in a particular niche, and that has been a bit of a jumping off point, I think. And Goodreads has actually been quite useful. The other thing that Goodreads is useful for, if you type into Google like a particular category, so like, I don't know, like young adult LGBT books into Google, it will often come up with Goodreads lists. The Goodreads lists are hit and miss. Sometimes they're excellent and sometimes they're a bit shit. But generally speaking, you can always find a few books on that list. So yeah, like I have done a lot of things. The other thing, I have also found websites dedicated to particular genres. So like there's some LGBT, they've fallen out of my brain, but like there are some websites dedicated purely to like queer literature. We Need Diverse Books is another one. That's not just LGBT, that is also like people of color and other diverse aspects. But yeah, so I have found websites that are like book recommendation websites dedicated to particular genre. So yeah, like digging is what I can say. And for me, it has helped to pull a list together. If you're not a list person, that might not help. But keeping that list has been really helpful because it's given me jumping off points to find other things. And also then I don't buy the same book twice.
Yeah.
Is that a bit better, a bit more tangible for you?
That the whole thing was good, but yeah. So two things just quickly that while they're in my head. Number one, it's a very good example of when you can actually like use the algorithms of social media to help you instead of just showing you like the stuff it normally does. And the other takeaway is obviously like it takes time.
Yeah, it has taken me quite a bit of time to do this. I've probably spent 4 to 6 hours researching over the last 2 weeks, I would say.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, the birth of this question it's been brewing for about, I'd say two or 3 months actively, but it's definitely been in the back of my head for a while because I don't think I've made it any secret that the first book I tried to write was a fantasy, and it was going to be a dark fantasy. And like, I won't go into the idea of it because that's still brewing in my head, but like I started trying to approach it. I got 3 chapters in on several occasions and I stopped because obviously the first book, the first book that I tried to write was the first of many books of an epic fantasy. And it just didn't work. I wasn't ready for it. I hadn't trained. I didn't know the craft. I didn't know like story arcs, anything like that. I was just blindly trying to write it. And like you saying about, you know, look at the things you watch, things that you read, like most of my life has been reading horror and reading fantasy. The bigger majority of my life has been watching fantasy. I don't really watch horror, just because I much prefer the prose and the beauty of the language of horror. And so, as I say, one big thing that I think I'm ready for is to try and create some big work, some kind of universe in which I can tie a lot of my works together. And I want fantasy to be an element of that. I mean, I've got fucking J.R. Tolkien tattooed on my arm, for God's sake. Like, I like it. It's a thing that I love. I've got like ornaments and statues and things of different fantasy things that I appreciate. And yeah, I'm ready. I feel ready now to write this big thing. I just don't know what it is yet. And the tough part for me, or not the tough part, the part that kind of really brought me around to starting to think about this properly was I've read quite a few dark fantasies. I've read a few fantasies over the last year, like friends' books and other ones that have been recommended, and they haven't resonated with me. And as I said to you recently, the reason they haven't, I've discovered, is they were YA. And I'm very much a person, and in no way do I mean for this to be snobbery. This is just like me and what I like to do. Like, I love to learn. I love to like improve. What's the face for?
So careful, because you're about to slag off my genre.
No, I'm not sagging off the genre at all, but like, for me, the stuff that I read is adult. And you've got me on edge now.
I'm sorry, I can't
Like,
help it.
no,
Just go on.
Yeah, no, it's not snobbery. It's just, for me, like, I prefer adult because YA doesn't resonate, because I like to feel untethered with my writing, which is why I write horror. Which is like one of the big draws for me for horror is like there aren't really any limits. Like, I can write whatever the fuck I want, and I don't have to like tone things down or like worry about sort of crossing any boundaries. It is just, horror is horror, and that's why I love that genre, because it's just unadulterated. It's just freedom. Counterpoint?
Just that I feel that way in YA.
Interesting.
Like, which is like on the very first page, I think 3 lines in, she talks about blowjobs. So, you know, there's not many lines that can't be crossed, I have to say. Anyway, but
yeah.
I think anyway, go on.
I think it comes more to like voice and stuff, but like, I think the reason that a lot of the horrors that I've enjoyed is just because of the beauty of the prose. And a lot of the fantasies that I like are the really sort of like heavy, dense, purpley ones that like just, I don't know. This is where the problem is, because I'm still trying to like work out where I sit on the spectrum of books that I read most of and that I want to write more of. And as you mentioned before, one of the really like piss annoying things about Amazon at the minute is their charts are so convoluted and diluted, and they're all over the place. And if you go into horror, it's full of lit RPG and urban fantasy and post-apoc and romance and all these different mixes, because lots of people see horror as a subgenre, but they put it in the horror charts. And so my curiosity, my thought patterns at the minute are like, maybe my home is fantasy with the horror subgenre. So I've recently read a book by an author called Douglas Clegg, and the book was called Priest of Blood, and it was like book 1 of 3 of the Vampiricon, and it was like this sort of dark fantasy, and it was delicious. And you saying about like you opening up those pages, you're reading them and you just feel like home. It was just one that like the last few books I read before that I'd enjoyed, but they were very much like I was reading because, you know, they hit certain points, or like I felt like I had to read them for certain reasons. And this one, like, I drank every word. I slowed myself down. I just appreciated the page. I appreciated the world building, the art form, like everything about it. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, what the fuck do I find more books like this? Because is this the kind of thing that I want to write? I don't know yet, because I don't feel like I've read enough to understand that genre.
And that's exactly why I just brought like 50 of these books.
Yeah.
Because I need to just consume. I just need to hoard and monster the genre. Yeah.
And I have a few fiction books lined up to write that I have to finish anyway. But like, the reason I'm thinking about this now is because, you know, 4 or 5 months down the line, when I do start properly like thinking about this, I've given myself that time to think and research and understand and really, because I've written a lot of books like for myself, for other people, and I'm now, like I say, I'm ready to write that thing that like ties stuff together and to really like grow.
Yeah. One of the things I just want to pick up that you have said, you have mentioned prose about 48,000 times. So I actually think you are looking for the genre that combines whatever it is genre-wise that you want with quality prose, because you mentioned prose when you were talking about mongrels. You mentioned prose when you were talking about something else. And I think you are having a love affair with good quality prose, but I say good quality, and the prose that you like might not be the prose that I like.
Oh, 100%.
But one thing to like give your intellection something to think about is what is it about the prose that you like that follows across the different books? Like, is it a particular style? Are they doing something particular with, you know, like to try and deconstruct that a bit further? Because it might be that you can find books in a wider genre that have that quality or, you know, essence to their prose. But
voice is a big part of it.
You've definitely mentioned prose many times in talking about this. But I also think you need to give yourself permission to spend a few hours doing the research.
No, I plan to. And I think as well, one thing that I've realized as well is like, I really like, well, it's no surprise, I really like to learn. We discussed this last week. And with horror, I'll never say, because you can't, I'll never say I've completed horror, but I've done a lot of horror. I'm at the point now where I feel like I can confidently write a horror book. And so I'm now like, well, how can I stretch that and grow more?
That is such a learner. Do you know how many people with learner strengths, they always do
They
this,
genre
they
hop.
genre hop. Yeah, once they feel they've got everything they've got they need from a genre, they'll genre hop. There's nothing to say you won't come back and level up again and do something even,
oh no, absolutely, yeah.
But yeah,
I'm not saying like in any way I'm done with horror, because like I love horror novellas and like short, like snappy little things, but it's just whatever my next project's going to be. And in my activated authors sprints yesterday, and just in the group in general, there's a vibe of, is one thing that hasn't been addressed when looking for genre, which is a big question, is, are you doing it for love or are you doing it for commerce? Because that really shapes where you point your attention. Because if you are looking to write to make money, there are certain tick boxes that you will have to pay attention to maximize your chances of selling. Whereas if it is much more for just the love of it, then you will take more risks, you will gamble, you will experiment a lot more, and the stuff that you read might be a lot more diverse. But we had a really interesting discussion yesterday between specifically two members of the group, one who's much more into sort of like just writing pulp for the fun of it, and one who is just very focused on like, this is the business, loves the art, but like this is where the business lies. And so I think that's also a big consideration to have, because when I left the day job, a lot of my focus was on fiction is going to be like the main income. And like fiction makes a modest income for me, but at the same time, like, and I think we've discussed this on the podcast as well, I don't want the pressure of money to guide my fiction. I want to, like, the reason I started writing was because I loved the art form of writing, and so I want to carry that and find a way to push that forward.
You want to find a way to make the fiction that you love pay your bills. It's the ultimate dream for everybody, right? If you can write in the genre that you love, in the voice and tone that you love, and have it still make money, even better. Like, as not as a, I'm writing this genre to make money, but I'm writing in this genre because I love it, and as a consequence it makes money, right? That is the ultimate dream. And that I completely get that, because the pressure on creativity is creativity destroying. It really is. Like, I don't think people understand what that burden of having to earn money is like on your creativity. And I think it's why so many people burn out.
100%. It's one of the big reasons. But I think lots of really tangible stuff there.
I hope that was helpful. Some of the things that just sort of
definitely. I think good timing as well, because obviously you've spoken a lot about your search for LGBTYA over the last few weeks, and it's something I'm definitely pondering a lot in the background. It's just one thing that I am having to do is clear my plate of a lot of books that I promised people that I'd read.
Are you saying no to them, pushing them back?
A couple of them. I've got like one more that I've got to get through, but
I also
because even reading for enjoyment, I need to remember.
I would also like to say, just to mark this episode, and I wasn't going to say anything, but I had the idea whilst we were talking of how I'm going to create a series, well, kind of a series, like a set of standalone interconnected, in the new genre. So I had that idea. Let it be known that this was the episode that I had the idea.
There we go. So I guess the question this week isn't how are we leveling up our author business, but how are we leveling up accountability on this podcast?
So I think the one thing that we need to do is have a chat over the next week to look at what we're going to do with this.
I'm going for that
accountability section.
I
think that's the only thing we should be accountable for.
And the thing that I love about this kind of stuff anyway is like this podcast hasn't really changed since episode 1, and when we started it was very much a let's see how it goes, so why not tweak it and see how we can improve it and make it even better.
Exactly, because I think we're growing and changing and have got different focuses, and yeah, I want to focus on the things I want to focus on.
There we go. So the question to all of you this week is, how do you choose a genre? Or how do you choose your genre? And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hungry for more?
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can hear more of my angelic accent and Dan's dulcet tones on our other podcasts.
For more of me, check out the Great Writers Share podcast.
For more of me, listen to the Rebel Author podcast. We'll be back next week holding each other to account as Dan
And Sacha
become
Next level.
authors.
Sacha Black cannot hear me. She hasn't got her headphones in, but she logged on. I could say whatever the fuck I want. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's Sacha Black and Dan Wilcox. And we're gonna rock the mic and do it LA. Cause we're the podcast team. We're an unstoppable duo. Boom, 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 boom. We're wearing purple together. Boom, boom. The text is often yellow.